Okay.
I'm sending it to you by email.
Okay.
Wally, can I share my screen? Or do I need any special permission to?
No, you can share your screen.
Okay, so then I'll send to you.
Okay, thanks. I'm waiting for it to drop. Good stuff. All right. Good afternoon, distinguished delegates. Thank you very much for joining in today. We're quite conscious of the fact that today is not the best of days, considering that federal elections start or take place tomorrow. Nevertheless, we felt it's expedient to continue with the program as scheduled, just so that we don't cause more confusion. My name is Tobena Erojikwe. I'm the chairman of the board of the MBA Institute of Continuing Legal Education. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's session of the new WIGS hand-holding series. I expect that you found the sessions that we've had so far informative and indeed illuminating. And I know that today's session will be very, very interesting. Our trainer for today is Mr. Desmond Oba. Desmond Projects Group at Templars. He holds a Master of Laws from the Harvard University, where he also served as a senior editor of Harvard Business Law Review. He graduated with first-class honors from the Nigerian Law School, holds a Bachelor of Laws from the Ebonyi State University, and has extensive experience advising project sponsors, borrowers, corporates, banks, funds, and other financial institutions on diverse transactions, including project finance, power projects, and other infrastructure development strategic investments, international capital markets issuance, structured finance, and corporate finance. Before joining Templars, he was a finance and project associate at the Lagos-based firm of GLS & Co., and a visiting associate at the London offices of Latham & Watkins LLP under the International Lawyers for African Secondment Program. He's ranked in a number of international legal directories, including IFLR 1000, Guide to the World's Leading Financial Law Firms, and Chambers Global Guide to the Legal Profession with clients and other independent sources describing him as a good problem solver and a very client-oriented, and as very effective, strong, and bright. Desmond runs a series for law students and young lawyers known as the Future Lawyers Series, the first edition of which was recently held at his alma mater at Ebonyi State University. With his citation, I'm sure you understand why we found it important to invite him for today's session. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce my brother and friend, Desmond Oba. Desmond, I yield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I keep advising people on is how to structure power projects. So if you see, the electricity in my background just went off, and I'm hoping that when this advice comes to fruition, things like this will no longer happen. But I'm sure you can all still see me. And thank you to the delegates for joining this session. In the course of this session, I'll be walking through a couple of things on how to break through what is a competitive market. I've got some slides that I will share, and let me know, IT, when it comes up. Can you see my screen now, Tobina?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So my topic today is to talk about breaking through in a highly competitive and dynamic legal market. And in the course of this, we'll be speaking about, like I say, speaking about a couple of things that are of importance to us. I've assumed that in my audience are mostly people who have just been called to the bar, because I understand we are speaking to new WIGS, and in some instances, we have people who are about 2-3 years post-call. And I think this session will be important for everyone who falls into that category. Some of the things you hear from me are not things that are strange to you. You may have heard this in other contexts, but we'll find different ways of emphasizing them to make them useful to the audience. Now, the truth is, let's start with what the globalized practice is. On account of globalization, the world has become completely interconnected, and almost every trade or profession can now be practiced on a cross-border basis. For us as lawyers, this means that we must begin to see ourselves as global practitioners who are applying, or at least able to apply our practices on a global platform. Now, put differently, we are now in a globalized legal profession and must therefore make conscious and deliberate efforts to stay relevant and keep up with trends and ensure that everything we do is competitive, useful, makes us fit for purpose, and globally mobile. Now, for those of us who practice, who are in law practice, or even in the corporate world, we have already begun to see the impact of such globalized practice in Nigeria, because amongst our friends and peers, most of us have started seeing or have heard of some Nigerian trained lawyers who are working in international firms who have no training abroad. They just pick them up from their firm in Nigeria and they're beginning to work at a global firm, whether it's a law firm or a multinational, whatever it is. Now, these sort of opportunities were not historically present, but we are seeing that they are increasing over time because it is becoming commonplace, because the world has become a globalized, it is now a global village. And so things like this will be commonplace going forward. So the question for young lawyers will be, how do I break through in this competitive and dynamic legal market? How do I position and prepare myself for a successful career? And those are the kind of things we will be looking at. Now, I will go to the next slide, which talks about supply and demand. And we're in a competitive market where supply exceeds demand. And what do I mean by this? The manner or the competition in the profession now stems from different sources, and opportunities for these are beginning to narrow in the legal profession. Now, let's do some statistics. The Nigerian Law School graduates an average of about 5,000 students every year. In 2022 alone, I understand that the law school graduated about 5,800 students. They sat for the bar exams, and many of them are currently undergoing their NYSC program now. Out of this number, about 119 hold first-class degrees, from the law school. And this 5,800 is in addition to just about the same number, 5,770 that the law school graduated in 2021. And these numbers are expected, the projection is expected to continue. What does this mean? To put it in context, it means that by the time some of us who are NYSC members in this session gets to 50-year associates, the Nigerian law school would conservatively have produced an additional 18 to 22,000 lawyers to add to the ones that we currently have in the system. So by any estimation at all, that is a large army that we have. So by any estimation, 18,000 to 22,000 lawyers in the next 5 years, in addition to the ones we have currently, is a large number of lawyers to have anywhere in the world. So that's a large army. So how do you explore this? What do you do to put yourself in that position where you need to be? Where is this large army of lawyers heading? What do you do in terms of choosing your career path? Now, where the profession provides a plethora of opportunities for people who have studied law, and there are different reasons why people study law. And when we graduate from the university or the law school, we begin to practice in different capacities. Many young lawyers make the error of assuming that lawyers end up in law practice or that they end up in law firms only. But upon graduating from the law school, there are different things that we can do with our time. And you will see some of this, you will see some of this on the screen and I'm sure some of us here are already doing this. So what are the options for us? You can be a lawyer in private law practice like I am. You can be an in-house counsel like some of us who are on the call, or some people that we know already are. We can be legal counsel in government. We can be professional service support in other professions. So you could be someone in, say, a KPMG, a Big Four, or an investment bank providing advice to them, not necessarily as legal counsel, as such, but working in different teams. You could become what many of us have become, politicians. You may join the academia, or you may simply want to be an entrepreneur, and your training your training as a lawyer will be very helpful to you as you pursue that course. Now, I have this slide where I talk about the dwindling opportunities for the young lawyer. And what are we talking about in terms of dwindling opportunities? It is while the platforms are many, it does seem that the opportunities on each platform are sadly not as much as one would have expected. And more than 50%, about 50 to 60% of fresh lawyers that graduate from the law school every year want to work in law firms. But unfortunately, the law firms that are available cannot take that number of lawyers. So, and to go back to what we had again, we said we have about 5,000 lawyers graduating every year. If 50 to 60 of us, or 60% of us want to work in law firms, in a couple of seconds, we'll see the capacity of those law firms to admit these people. And what do I mean by law firms? By law firms, I'm talking about law firms that's where you can earn a decent living. I'm talking about law firms where you can pursue professional satisfaction. I'm talking about law firms where you can compete with your peers who are in another profession, and a law firm that gives you the opportunity to get to the height of your career and thrive. That is the context in which I refer to law firms here. Now, there are many lawyers, but those law firms are not too many. In Nigeria today, we can easily count the number of law firms that fit into this category that offer these fine opportunities. And maybe there are about 20 or 30 of them, right? And so I say here, let's do some statistical assumptions. Let us assume, for example, that there are actually 50 of those law firms. And 50 is actually an extreme optimism. And let's say out of these 50, each of them would hire 20 of us who graduate from law school. What does that mean? It means that by the time 50 of these law firms that offer those opportunities hire 20 each, would have hired about 1,000 of the people who graduate from the law school. That's about 20% of the people graduating in each class every year. That doesn't seem to be a great number for me, and that's why I say the opportunities for the young lawyer is dwindling. So for a section of the legal market that is expected to employ up to 50 to 60% of new law graduates every year, those statistics are actually abysmal. And this limited opportunity tells on the earning capacity and comfort levels of young lawyers who may be forced to take up employments elsewhere or do things that they ordinarily would not have wanted to do. And what are the things that are compounding our woes? What are the things that are making this sort of migration difficult for us. It is, first, we have artificial intelligence, and everyone on the call understands what that means. We have ChatGPT now that is trending. Now, so a client sent me a document just last night to review, and they said, Desmond, can you spend time reviewing this 20-page document for me and send me your comments later on today? Even before I opened the document, the client said, but I must warn, I developed this. I developed this using the chat app, and so I want you to look at it closely and see if there is anything you can add to it. What does that do for people who charge by the hour? It means that as opposed to starting the drafting of that document from the scratch, and there's this app has created that document and made it possible for me, and has limited my time to simply reviewing it. And when you look at the documents they prepare, they are not necessarily bad documents, if we're being frank with ourselves, but there are certain changes we can make to it. But the amount of time you spend making those changes will not be the same amount you'd have spent if you were asked to draft that document from the scratch. And that means if I was to bill for 5 hours of my time or 6 hours of my time doing that document, I'll be forced to bill for an hour, 30 minutes or 2 hours tops. So artificial intelligence is one of those things compounding our woes as young lawyers. The second is international law firms. For those of us who practice in Nigeria, we are seeing an influx of international law firms taking away from us what would ordinarily be our job opportunities in Nigeria. And so law firms that would have, if all of the opportunities were here locally, law firms that would have hired many young lawyers to join their team and do most of that work will not do so. They will limit themselves to that hypothetical 20 per year that we talked about, because the amount of work to be done has been split between those law firms and the international ones. There is also what we call the online law firms, people who all they do is spend their time online. They don't have an office anywhere. They're not looking to hire anybody. They can do anything they want to do online and solve their problems. And then those that I refer to as para-lawyers, as John Grisham calls them, or DIY lawyers, those who do it themselves, like the client of mine who sent me that document saying, I'm doing it myself. I need to just spend time doing this. And there are, of course, other professional service providers like the Big Four. The Big Four here, I refer to the Big Four accounting firms, the KPMGs of this world, PwC, Ernst & Young, and Deloitte. So these ones are also feeding on what we originally considered to be an exclusive dining table. So we see them doing work that many people consider to be legal services, but which, strictly speaking, in many cases may actually not be legal services. The things that clients ordinarily would have come to lawyers for, but clients now see them as one-stop shop where they can go to get the kind of support that they need. And so you have these people compounding the woes of young lawyers and making these opportunities to become slimmer than they used to be. What do we do to stem the tide? Realizing these challenges and knowing that the opportunities are getting slimmer and the market is getting more competitive, a young lawyer must seek to find ways of positioning himself or herself to break through and take advantage of the competition in the market today. And that is why in the next slide, I talk about what are some maybe 10 things that we can do to position ourselves for the future. The first one that I have here is I talk about, do grades and class of degree still matter? This is not something I ordinarily would have talked about. When I speak to people in universities, it is something I tend to emphasize. For an audience like this, it is something I would like to de-emphasize, but mention regardless. Why do I think it is worth mentioning? This because I'm speaking to an audience where many of us are fresh out of the law school. People have called me to talk about it, even people who work at my firm and elsewhere. And after this, when I graduated with 2.2 from my university, I am now a second year associate. What do I do in this kind of situation? So I thought to bring this up and give you what my thoughts are in relation to good grades and class of degree, whether they still matter. Now, good grades and class of degree for me are important in any competing world, but remember that they are not everything. Like I said, I've heard young lawyers tell me that their growth is stunted because they think that they didn't make the best of degrees, and that if they had good degrees, they would have made better progress than they are currently making. I don't think that's entirely correct. Speaking from where I sit, good grades do not in themselves necessarily translate into a good career. And while they can or make one a great lawyer, while they are useful in making you stand out from a competing crowd in your early days, they don't necessarily define where you go to. Here, I'm not suggesting that we pick up the phone and speak to our younger ones and tell them why they should not study hard to come out with good grades. What I should emphasize, or we should emphasize, is that if you have a pool of 2,000 students or 2,000 applicants looking to join, whether it's a corporation, whether it's a law firm, you would imagine if you were a HR officer that you want to use grades as your first line approach to, without those that you want to get into your system. Because you can't possibly interview 1,000 of them or 2,000 of them. So what do you do as your first filtration process is who have got the best grades that I can take in? Because some people may be very excellent lawyers, they don't have the grades. They may be very good lawyers who if you put them before a client or you get them to work at your firm, they will be the real heavy hitters, people who can take the load off you. But you have no opportunity of knowing that until they sit in front of you. So good grades help you to filter those that you must bring in front of you. And that's why I think it's important. And as time goes on and experience continues to build, those grades are completely forgotten. It doesn't matter then whether you had a first class from the university or the law school, and they just become completely irrelevant. So why good grades are why good grades are not in themselves all sufficient, they are a huge advantage, and in an increasingly competitive profession like ours, especially in the early stage. So while it might not be for you anymore, I think we should continue to emphasize that to those who are in school and those who look up to us as mentors. What is the second thing that I think we should bear in mind? It is developing useful professional relationships. I am aware that my colleague from MTN, who spoke a couple of days here, sort of emphasized this. But I think one cannot say it many times. As a young lawyer who's seeking to make inroads in your career, the strength of your professional network is absolutely important. Now, your professional network helps you to focus and exposes you to what is out there. So you must make and maintain a great network of professional relationships. You should also take interest in people who may become your mentors in future, or who will provide professional guidance and direction to you in every step of the process. It's absolutely important. And I see many people who do this, reaching out to more senior lawyers, asking to be mentors, wanting to get into their professional network. Sometimes we go around in a way that is not necessarily best, but I'm sure those who spoke about this topic in particular would have talked about how some people find it mildly irritating that when young lawyers, and not just young lawyers, young professionals come to you, after 2 weeks of asking to be a mentee, the next thing they're talking about is how you will get them that job into the organization where you work. I don't necessarily think that is what we mean by building that professional network. At least it is not the first thing that we approach people with. We must find a way of balancing our desire to get into a place and also emphasizing to people who are mentors that we are what the references that we want them to give to us, or that we are what the risk of them hiring us. Until we get to that place where they are comfortable with us in that sense, I think it's not worth shooting our shots, like they say. Now, the other thing is commercial awareness, and this is very important in the globalized village that we live in today. Clients and employers are attracted to young lawyers that are commercially aware. Being commercially aware means that you are staying up to date on daily happenings and developments in the business and commercial world. A significant portion of law today revolves around business and commerce in the marketplace and across geographies. And so commercial awareness is one of the key requirements that the good and competent lawyer needs to have at all time and to master. I always give the example of an elevator lawyer that I know about. The story is told to me by my own mentor that he was in an elevator at the Hilton, going up to his room as he checked in on a particular day, and he met someone in the elevator who would later become a very big client of his firm, and they just had that conversation. And the conversation went well in the sense that you could hear him talk about different things that were not necessarily law, but there was a clear demonstration of commercial awareness and being familiar with things going on in the business world, because he's a business lawyer, things going on in the business world, both within Nigeria and outside of it. And when you have that sort of general understanding of things, clients are naturally attracted to you and they want to hear more. And when things come up, they think, I know a lawyer who is able to solve this problem for me, and they reach out to you. That for me is one way of standing out from the crowd. And how can one become commercially aware? It is participating in discussion forums like the one we're having here, industry-specific trainings and business clubs, and there are many of them. It is attending lectures and seminars that focus on business and commerce. We can do so by interacting with various business professionals. We can attend conferences where commercial issues are discussed. The MBA, for example, offers that platform in various ways. It's either you're doing that through the section on business law of the MBA, the SPL, the section on legal SLP, section on legal practice, organizes things like that in its own space. It is also by reading the right things on social media. The MBA Institute of Continuing Legal Education under the leadership of Tobin Erejikwe has also been doing great work in that sense, because over the last 12 to 15 months, we have had series of trainings organized for people in different areas. There have been trainings on fintech. There have been trainings on globalization. There have been trainings on different aspects of things that when you listen to them and attend those trainings, you will see you're picking something that makes you a better lawyer on each day, and keeping pace with technological advancements is also another way of ensuring that you are commercially aware and you are very useful to your clients. Then I have the fourth item here that I refer to as understanding and demonstrating interest in emerging areas of law. Why is this important? It is important because times are changing and lawyers need to change too. Clients have become more sophisticated than they used to be, and they expect value addition from their lawyers and an understanding of emerging areas of law that affect their businesses. So for a new entrant like most of us, you don't need to be an expert in those areas yet, but showing interest in them and being able to hold a conversation around those areas of interest will pique the interest of any prospective employer or even those with whom we deal as clients. Today, serving lawyers and employers are not only interested in hearing you talk about your interest, they're interested in not just about law, but they want to hear what your interest is in different things. So you have people talking about taxation, entertainment, e-commerce. They want to hear you talk about technology and some other areas of law that directly impact their businesses. If you meet a business client, and perhaps I'm emphasizing business clients a lot because that's my own space, they may not be too interested in what happens in terms of violation of human rights. They may not be so interested in what happens with the jurisprudential treatment that the court will give to certain things. They're interested in hearing how your understanding of the law matches their needs as business people. So if we understand and demonstrate interest in those emerging areas of law, it will be very helpful for you in standing yourself out from the crowd. Now, a very important one is postgraduate degrees. How relevant are they? So you have finished from the law school, you have a first class, you have a 2-1, whatever class of degree you have. The next thing you want to do is you want to pursue a postgraduate degree. And the question is, how relevant is that in standing you out from the crowd? Is a postgraduate degree an essential startup instrument for you? Many people will call you prof and say, the best thing for you to become now is go do your master's. You just finished NYSC, go do your master's, go do a PhD, become a doctor, and the world will be at your feet. Perhaps that is correct, but would that be the best decision for you to take as someone who has newly entered the profession? And I say that the decision on whether to embark on further studies should be guided by some experience, in my view, superior advice, and clarity of thoughts on what you want to do in the long term with that degree or at all. So to be clear, postgraduate degrees are important and they are very vital tools for one's continuous development. However, experience shows that clients are basically interested in your ability to deliver, and that most employers, especially in private law firms, prefer young lawyers who have gained a few years of experience before venturing into further studies. Now, even from a personal perspective, the practical experience will enable you as a young lawyer decide on what area of law or at all or generally in life that you want to pursue a postgraduate degree in. I often give the example of myself. I qualified in 2008, and I became a partner at my firm in 2007. So that was about 9 years. All through that period, I would never bother with a postgraduate degree. In 2021, I thought, that was about 13 years after practicing law, I told myself, okay, Desmond, I think it's time for you to take a break from work. I took a sabbatical and went to do a master's degree. At the time I was doing it, Was I going there to learn something absolutely new? Perhaps not, but it was a burning desire in me that I needed to complete something. And I knew exactly what I wanted to focus on at that stage. I'm not suggesting that people need to wait that long before they pursue that degree, but I'm saying if you want to pursue a postgraduate degree, maybe it makes sense for you to sit back, understand exactly what you want to do with that degree, and 2, 3, 4 years into your practice of law or whatever you're doing, you may then take the decision to pursue a postgraduate degree as a way of elevating you to the next level when you complete that degree. Because with the degree, for example, a very, very simple calculation. If I finish my NYC today and I go off immediately to do a master's in whatever school I've done it at, when I come back to on the assumption that you don't jack back, you come back to the firm or the organization where you used to work, that's extra certificate that you have, using my firm as an example, will not necessarily translate to a significant promotion for you. It wouldn't, because you are still within that age bracket where you must stay within a particular band in the employment level. But imagine, for instance, that you've done this for 2, 3 years and you go off and you have an additional degree you're coming back with. It gives you that leverage to begin to tell people that I think I was an associate before I left. I have gotten an additional degree now. I think this degree, and in terms of years of experience, I've got about 2, 3 years of experience. I think I'm not in a position to be negotiating to become senior associate at the firm. There should be something that should be value add for coming with this degree, because I have got an additional certification and I have got some experience. But if I go off straight out of law school to pursue an additional degree and I come back, I am still green. There's no experience to count for it. So I'm not in a position to negotiate something significantly higher. Now, this does not necessarily work for everyone. And we must realize that there are those who simply want to get a degree almost immediately for whatever purpose they want to get it for. And that's why I said we must always ask ourselves, what am I pursuing this additional degree for? There are those who want to go into the academia. You've made a decision in your life that at 30, you must be a PhD holder. Of course, if that is your life ambition, you should begin to pursue that very quickly, as opposed to waiting for a number of years before you venture into it. And we know many people in our circle who have done things like that at different times. But while you are waiting to pursue additional formal degrees, it is also possible for you to stand yourself out in different ways. And here I'm talking about relevant certifications. Even before you choose to take that 1 or 2 years off to do an MBA or do a master's in law or do a master's in whatever you want to do, you may begin to get some professional certifications that can stand you apart from others. And this is whether pre or post your postgraduate degree. And the certifications not only show that you are committed to your work and that you can multitask, they also show that you are determined, you know what you're doing, and that you are focused and proficient in the area you are certified in. So in today's dynamic legal market, where multidisciplinary skills among lawyers are encouraged, a good and relevant professional certification outside of law could be an added advantage for your future. So I'm talking of you are qualified as a lawyer, but you think there is another course that you want. When I say course, I mean path that you want to follow while still remaining within that sphere of law. What do you do to get yourself into that position? Take, for example, you think that tax law is your thing, and there are many tax lawyers today. You ask yourself, maybe I should actually, rather than do a certificate in chartered secretaries, maybe I should get a certificate in accounting instead, because tax is essentially accounting and law put together. So if I get a certificate in accounting and I am certified as an accountant, so I have an understanding of the numbers and how the figures work together in the accounting context, and then I bring my knowledge of tax into it, and it makes me a better lawyer. You may choose to become chartered as what they call a CITN, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. If you say what you want to do is that you want to pursue a career as becoming a company secretary, and that's really your focus. So why don't you begin to pursue chartered secretary certification? And there are many of them even in more bespoke areas today. Arbitration, the ICLE has this partnership with some arbitration institutes where they do the certification programs for young lawyers. The guys who do intellectual property have found their own. The people who do project finance have found theirs. For fintech now, many Ivy League universities offer those sort of trainings. So if you think that those are the kind of things that you want to pursue, there are many things you can do without the formal master's degree or additional degree that you can pursue. 2-3 months, you get that, you add it to your CV, add it to your profile. It begins to stand you apart from the guy who does not have any of those and who simply continues to work every day without wanting to get more. What is the seventh one? One that I'm very, very interested in addition to the other ones. It is, you need to develop good marketing and selling skills. Here, I'm not suggesting that we become bankers who are looking to open accounts. Perhaps a better usage would have been develop good business development skills. But I thought to be quite granular in what that means. It is good marketing skills and good selling skills. The truth is, law is a business as much as it is a vocation. And law firms and businesses need grinders, but they also need rainmakers too. Because you need to make the rain fall, you need to bring in the work before you pass it down to those who must make that work happen. So imagine you were in a firm of 15 people or 20 people, where the only person that brings in work is the principal at the firm. That firm, as far as I'm concerned, is not one that will be there in the near future. Because if it's only one person bringing in the work, when that person falls ill, that person is no longer there. The business will simply tank and nothing else will go forward. So you as a young lawyer must learn to develop the skills that you need to also generate business for the organization. So you need to have that entrepreneurial mindset and ability to attract clients. This, honestly, is perhaps the most challenging aspect of law. It is very challenging, not just for young lawyers, but also for people who are quite still. People tell you that, well, I think I'm just an executioner. All I need to do is sit behind my computer, bring the work, and I can break it down for you and do it exactly the way it needs to be. Why that is a good thing, to have people who are actual grinders and can do the work. I think people are actually attracted to those who have the ability to do both. You can do the work and you can also make the rain fall. So business development for lawyers is an entire course on its own. And I'm hoping that at some point, if that has not happened already, the Institute will find a way of organizing a course for where we can talk about business development for lawyers and how you can go about it. But I think the one thing to mention in business development is that you must know the first rule of business development, which is my rule. You must keep your lawyers' friends close, but keep your non-lawyers' friends even closer. It is a rule that you must never forget. So all of your people who went to law school with you, absolutely important for you to keep them close as your friends. But those ones whom you told that you were in the almighty faculty of law and that you thought less about them, those are the ones you need to keep closer, because those are the ones that will actually bring the business to you, because your colleague who is a lawyer himself is competing for the same work with you. When that your colleague moves into an organization, say as in the legal department of an organization, he might be too young to refer work your way until he climbs up the ladder. That's why you must keep them close. But the ones who are not themselves lawyers, if they go into whatever organization they are working at, they are at that level. They ask them to, who do we talk to in the legal profession to get work? So they may not be the ones to take the final decision, but at least your name gets mentioned. So keep your lawyer friends close, but keep your non-lawyer friends even closer. That's absolutely important. Now, the other thing is, never see yourself as too junior to attract a client. I see some hands are raised and I'll come to take questions shortly, but let me just run through this. Never see yourself as too junior to attract a client. The art of attracting clients, is a long life ability that we must continue to grow. So the earlier we begin to learn how to do it, the better for us. And I think one reason why it's absolutely important is, in this profession, people work for others, but they're not just working for others, they're also working for themselves. As you are being trained in the organization where you work, whether it is at the Law Crest, whether it is at my firm, whether it's anywhere, the mindset of many people is that I am going through a training phase where at some point I will become the owner of my own business, which is why they say, people loosely say you can't employ a lawyer, every lawyer is an employer on his own. But the question is, if you don't grow those skills as a young lawyer, when you break out to start your own practice, you will simply be struggling. You'll be struggling because you did not at your early stage develop the skills that you need to attract clients. The only skill you have will be your ability to do the work. But how do you bring in that work yourself? Because you didn't grow those skills at the early stage of your life. So when you eventually make contacts with people and you attract clients to them, you should also learn to highlight an important strength that you have. Maybe it's the strength of helping connect them to opportunities that they also need. And what do I mean here? You are a lawyer, and because of the vintage position you occupy, you see different things happening in the market. You are speaking to one client today who has an interest in something, and you're saying, actually, I can refer you to someone else who is able to help your own business grow. That person is seeing you as not giving legal advice, but you are adding value to that person's business. An example, very recently, we advised Elon Musk on his Starlink entry into Nigeria. A couple of days ago, someone reached out to us to say, "Oh, we see you advised Starlink on his entry into Nigeria. How is it possible for us to get connected to that business?" This is actually a client that we have been pitching to for a long time. Now we're not the ones doing the pitching; they are coming to us to pitch to say, how do we get connected to these people to also provide the service that they offer to that business? And we are currently in talks on how do we link these two businesses together. We're not providing legal service at this phase, but what you should know is that if that connection were to happen, that's prospective clients that we're pitching to will be almost eternally beholden to us, because what have we done? We have helped their own business to grow, and they also get an advantage from it. No legal service offered. All you've done is bring to an existing client and a prospective client together, and they are speaking at their own level. But at some point, all of that will trickle down to you in terms of legal support that you provide. So those are some of the things you must think about when you say, I am looking to grow business. I've spent a lot of time on this because it's absolutely important. I'm looking to grow business. So growing business is not just asking somebody to give me work and when can you send me work to do? Also ask yourself, how can I add value to this person's business? The last point of that is a young lawyer who is technically sound will grow very fast. But one who combines legal proficiency and good marketing skills will grow even faster in any organization you find yourself, whether it's within law practice or outside of law practice. And so that's something to bear in mind. The 8th point for me, and there are 10 of them, so I'll be finishing quite very soon. The 8th point for me is consider writing and publishing in areas of interest. You should consider writing and publishing in areas that interest you. As a young practitioner, you can grow your fame and relevance through writing articles of interest in areas that you find interesting, particularly if those areas are still emerging and there is a dearth of literature in those places. Having a number of decent articles to your credit can earn you some plaudits and market recognition. And I know a number of young lawyers who do this all the time. They simply just write. If they hear that something has happened, they write something on it. So as a young lawyer, your articles need not be extremely professional as such. When I say professional, actually, they need not be professorial. Maybe that's what I should say. Your articles need not be professorial. It doesn't, because what you are trying to do is to demonstrate knowledge and to position yourself as one who understands that area of practice, who can have a conversation in that space. And so if you begin to write as much as possible in things that's where we don't have a lot of literature or things that you understand quite well, you will see that you are standing yourself apart from many others. There is a lady whom I met in 2020 in the course of the MBA lectionary in 2020. Whom I have got a lot of respect for today, because I tell people each time that this lady writes on intellectual property, and that's all I see her write about. Why do I have a lot of respect for her? Because there is hardly anything that happens in Nigeria that is topical that she won't give you the intellectual aspects of it. And I tell her that if I have any instructions, if I didn't have a team at the firm looking after IP, if I have any instructions on IP, I would think of no other person than that. Years post-call now, 4 or 5 years post-call now. But why is that important? She has sort of drummed it into my head that there is hardly anything about IP today that you want to talk about that I don't have a sense of how it goes on. Whether it is Peter Obi's picture of a boy trying to stop his convoy, whether it is somebody Sabinus advertising somebody using his image to do something. She's written articles on all of those. So that tells me that she has a clear knowledge of what this is. The articles may not be professorial, like I said, but they just show that there is consistency and that she has indicated interest in an area that she wants to focus on. So that sort of has elevated her in my eyes. The mistakes that you make as a young lawyer or as a young writer can be forgiven more than they can be forgiven if you are older in the profession. So Max Ikongbe is on the call. Max is 10 years plus within the legal profession now. If Max were to write an article today, I will look at it with a fine-tooth comb and begin to point out errors. I want to write a rejoinder. But if you as a young lawyer were to write, one would say, those mistakes can be forgiven because you are still growing your skills. So, and as you grow older in writing, you get better at it. So the point is, begin to write today if you have the skills to do so. My other point will be You need to be absorbent and versatile. I am not so sure there is much to be said here because it's self-explanatory. By this, I mean, as a young lawyer, you are expected to be open-minded, open to amassing as much knowledge as you can. What you know is the difference between you and the person who's sitting next to you. To be competitive, you would be required to be a sponge and be willing to learn as much as possible in your formative years. So you need to take in as much as possible. So a young WIG that is looking to break through in a dynamic and competitive market must be abreast of issues as they evolve, and the ability to listen intently and distill useful information that is necessary for your growth. So in essence, you'll be required to be well-rounded. You need to have a clear knowledge of a variety of subjects. And this comes from reading widely and from training your mind and listening to people who know more than you, as opposed to speaking more than you need to. I think my last point is to develop other soft skills. And here you can see what we talk about. It needs to be a team player, communication skills, resilience, leadership, self-confidence, accountability, problem solving, time management, the whole works. One would see it as being too much, but it is important that we pick up these skills as much as possible and see how we can apply them to our everyday life. If you work for a law firm, if you work for a company in Nigeria, if you work for a multinational, people want to see that you are able to bring on these skills in addition to the actual skills you've been hired to do. In our own case, in addition to being a lawyer, how you projecting yourself and working across different teams to drive goal and objective of the organization. Remember, again, what we are doing is how do you position yourself to break through in a competitive and dynamic market? Because the competition is much. You must bring on those skills that make you better than the next person. And so what are my parting shots as we close? It is to say we should not allow competition to pass us by. We should begin to deploy some of these things that I've mentioned. I'm sure many of you are already doing that, and some other things that you've heard about in the course of this training over the last 1 week. We should as much as possible begin to grow. I can't talk about the BD skills enough. Grow the BD skills, position ourselves in a way that people who see us look up to us and want to come to us for whatever they need to do. You should stay awake and evolve with the times. You should not sleep. You should not slumber, like the Holy Books say. You should, as much as possible, stay awake, watch what is happening, what is going on around the world. Make it a point of duty to learn something different at every point in time. And as you're learning that, you're not learning it for fun. You're asking yourself, how relevant is this stuff to my professional growth? And how can I make a difference in the life of my employer or in the business of my employer? Or in the business of the clients that I work for at the moment. So I've come to that point where I will say, let us share our thoughts. If you've got any questions that you want to ask, I'm happy to take those. I don't know how it is done, Chairman. Is it that people ask questions directly, or you collate the questions and pass them to me? But either way, I'm happy to take questions now.
Thank you very much, Desmond. Few house rules. We have a few panelists here. I can see Mayo Olabi, Toby Adebowale, and Maxi Cromwell. So in a moment, I'm going to ask them for their comments just on your presentation. Then I'll ask, I can see some people raising their hands, but we rather prefer that they just drop their questions on the Q&A box, and then we can raise those questions and interrogate them. But I think that at the moment, where we are is I'll start with making my own comments. Desmond, can you drop your slide? I will start by making my own comments, and then we take it from there. So Desmond, thank you very much for what I think is, I must admit, was a very brilliant presentation. Topic, breaking through in a competitive and dynamic market. I don't think that you could think of a more topical issue to speak about at this moment in time. And I think it was so very well delivered and straight to the point. So, and first I must say that I'm going to definitely take you up on the training on business development, because it's an idea that it's such an amazing idea. And just listening to the presentations that we've had on the New Week series, I actually think that they are so significant and impactful that a lot of our more senior colleagues could indeed benefit from them. I mean, what you've discussed this afternoon is so contemporary and indeed advanced for many, from perspective of many people that I've had conversations with. But thank you very much on an exceptionally brilliant presentation. Now, just to go to the meat of your presentation, just to make a few comments. I picked up the point you made about globalization. But I think it's such a big issue that we must all be conscious of it and aware of it. How dynamic the workplace has become, how competitive it's become. And you made a good point about the number of lawyers we have in Nigeria. Whether we like it or not, we have to find a way to equip them to be competitive and to earn as much as they can within the global market. And one element that I always say to people, because moving around, talking to people across Nigeria, professional lawyers, I find that people have been circumscribed by the space that they find themselves in. So I go to Owerri and somebody says to me, the only thing we do here in Owerri is land and chieftaincy matters. So if you're doing any training on ICLE, it doesn't matter to me. I really don't see the reason why I want to log in. And my first response to them is that if I have 50 clients that I service personally, I probably don't know 40 of them. I've never seen them, never met them. If I meet them, it's because I'm adventurous enough to want to meet them because I'm in Singapore or in London or in America, and I think, oh, this guy is in this city. I want to sit down and put a face to the name. In fact, previously, some would say, oh, let's have a Zoom meeting so we know you. But now, a lot of people don't know you. They don't really care. You can do the job. We know you can do the job. We instruct you and you move on. So equipping yourself and getting the knowledge that you need to service a market and being able to put yourself out there is critical. And I felt it was important to put that point out there. For instance, my friends in the IP space tell me that you have more trademarks registration from Onitsha than anywhere else in Nigeria. And then the question I ask is, how many IP practitioners do you have in Onitsha? So I just said to make that point. I'm also excited that you made the point about the master's degree and you used your own experience and your own trajectory to illustrate the point. I mean, I think that everyone knows with or without a master's degree, you already a known name in your area of specialization and indeed beyond in the legal profession. So that defeats that myth and confusion that most Nigerian young lawyers face around, the significance and the importance of a master's degree. I often say to people that I practiced in England for 10 years, and at some point in that practice experience, I found that I had to evaluate a lot of profiles of different notable lawyers in England. And it was remarkable to find that there were I only had one instance I saw someone who had a PhD. I never even saw anyone in those beats, just had a master's degree. So they were quite clear about where they wanted to go. For them in England, it's your post-qualification experience that matters. So I agree with your point that you need to be careful about what you're going to study when you go to do that master's degree, and you need to think about the value that it will add when you come back to the terrain, especially in Nigeria, where the market is not yet matured in different areas of law. But you need to also know or be sure that there is space for that area that you studied. There was a time every Nigerian lawyer wanted to go abroad to do a master's degree when they finish school. And sometimes they come back, they find that they've lost some traction and really have to start from the beginning. So I think that the people in England and even in the US who you will not find taking on postgraduate studies unless they want to take on an academic career. There's a good reason why they do that. And then you talked about marketing and was marketing skills that you talked about and selling. And I found it also very interesting because on some of these sessions, people have asked about the RPC and marketing and all of that. And I think you put it quite simply and quite nicely. All I would say in addition is, as a lawyer, that's what I think you hit the nail on the head when you said keep your lawyer friends close and keep your non-lawyer friends closer. I mean, I think it's really about the impression you make Because I always say that whenever an impression is made, whatever a decision is made about you, you're never on that table. And because you're never on that table, it's important that the people who you meet and interact with have an understanding of what you are able to do, what you do on a daily basis, and who exactly you are. So everywhere you go, people prototype you, there are stereotypes. So you come in, you speak in a certain way, people have an impression of you. And so in your conversations, don't leave anybody without the person realizing that this is the lawyer that you are, the type of lawyer you've become, the experience you've had, and all of that. So thank you very much. That's my own contribution for today's session. I really thoroughly enjoyed myself. I will now invite, I think I'll start with Maya. What would that be? Maya, are you on?
Sure, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm going to break your protocol. While I'm happy for the panelists to speak, I think sometimes people are more encouraged when they ask their questions directly. So if you want to take some questions from people who have raised their hands, maybe you want to do 5 people who can ask their questions directly as opposed to dropping in the box, because I see I have about 200 and something messages there. So scrolling through to pick the messages, unless someone is already doing that, might just be tough. But if people have their hands up, you can take a couple of questions from them towards the end of the session, if you don't mind.
So I can't see any hands up at the moment, right?
But
I see that about 9.
I'm seeing an Ozioma Soludo. I'm sure there are a couple of others, but I'm saying if people have questions, they may raise their hands to ask the questions. If your rules would allow you to take questions directly from them.
No, of course. Why not? So thank you very much. So I'll just quickly take the my Wadam and then come back to you. Exactly. That's okay. Yeah.
Okay,
all
thanks.
Right. Thanks. Okay. Maya, are you there? All right. In the absence of Maya, Maxi Kumwe.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I hope you can hear me now.
Max, we can hear you.
Max, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yes, and thanks Desmond for that presentation. I thought that was extremely well put, and then importantly, you hit some of the really good high notes I expect would be beneficial to anyone who's just coming to a profession. Like I always mention on on this platform, for some of us, when we got into the profession, we didn't really know what we got into. It took 2 to 3 years to really understand what we had come into, what the profession was about, the industry was all about. So having these kinds of ideas early on, I believe, would really help to guide any new week to make the right decisions. And I just want to point out one of the things you mentioned, which I think is very important, is the question of getting an LLM. I get a few people ask me about LLM and my opinion. I don't have an LLM yet, so I'm sure I'm a lot like Desmond. I'm waiting until I fully mature, before I go for an LLM. But one of the things I tell people is that LLM depends on your trajectory in the profession. If you just want to get employment at a really good law firm like Desmond's law firm, for instance, yes, it would be good to get an LLM immediately you are done with your LLB. It stands you a good chance, in the interview rounds and all of that. But my own story in law is a little different because I started my law firm straight out of law school. So because of that, my thinking about LLM and all is from a different perspective. And also, if you are somebody who wants to get into leadership of a law firm, into the partnership and all, you might think of LLM differently. So for the person who needs an LLM for employment, you just want LLM maybe for 80% of it to get new knowledge and to give you employment opportunity. But for someone who wants to run your own firm, or you want to get into partnership or high level of firms, you might want to think of an LLM more as a networking opportunity than a learning opportunity. So perhaps you go there because 60% of what you want is to get the right network. So if you go to a good school like Desmond went to, those schools maintain their alumni network. They invest a lot in getting the right kinds of people. So you are sure that the class you are getting into, you are handpicked to get into classes where future CEOs, future leaders of governments and high-level international organizations would be in the same class with you. So it gives you room to leverage your network. So just have that at the back of your mind in making up your mind about an LLM. That an LLM is not just about gaining new knowledge. New knowledge is good and fine, but like Desmond mentioned, you can get some of that new knowledge from other organizations like Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, Chartered Institute of Secretaries, and some of these professional associations. But what is good to target in an LLM is always look at an LLM that gives you, new open, networks that you would not ordinarily be able to get into before. So I hope this just helps you in making that decision. And of course, like Tobena also say, sometimes doing an LLM too quickly could be a disadvantage, but if you do it abroad, you get disengaged, you don't get some of those basics of legal practice in Nigeria into your system. So by the time you do your LLM and come back, you're a little disconnected from some of the frustrations and the realities that legal practice here entails. So it might be good to make your mind up carefully. If you, like I said, if you want to get into a big law firm, do it immediately. If not, advice, give it a year, try and practice a little, even if it's a mid-sized law firm, just get some experience before you go for that LLM. And in choosing your LLM, apart from the knowledge, also look for a school that really has a good alumni system that selects the kind of people that get in there so that you're also building a good network while you are learning as well. Thank you, sir. That would be my points.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Max.
Max.
Just to add to that, and I don't know if I emphasize this, but when one chooses to do an LLM, we should also be careful in the area that we want to do our LLM in. There are many subjects today that you finish your LLM, come back to Nigeria, assuming you want to come back to Nigeria. I must emphasize that fact. And you see that you ask yourself, why did I bother doing this? Because law firms, it should only give me a leverage when I'm going to sit at an interview, or when I send my CV to someone and they see what I've done my LLM, and they should be able to say, oh, get this person, let's talk to this person. But after you return 6, 9 months, 1 year, nobody has bothered to call you for an interview, and you ask yourself, so why did I spend all of that money doing an LLM outside of Nigeria? Or why did I even bother going to university within Nigeria to do my LLM? Because Nigerian universities also offer good LLM programs. So you should be tactical in choosing what area you're going to do an LLM. So today, amongst millennia, there are lots of things about emerging areas. When we talk about emerging areas, we're talking about what are those areas where people's interest is beginning to move to. What are those areas where people are finding relevance? And because many of the law firms that many of us want to get hired into are not run by people our age, the people who own those law firms are not as skilled not as skilled in those emerging areas as they should be. So they are looking for young people who can help them run that desk. They are looking for that young guy who understands financial technology so much that can say, I'm coming into your practice to help you grow your fintech practice. So if you do an LLM in that space, for example, I think it gives you an edge, because the guy who's 57, who owns one of the best law firms in Nigeria, probably doesn't know that area. If you do an LLM in an area where he's a master himself, he might ask himself, so what value is this person coming to add for me? So whatever choice we make in pursuing an LLM should be such that when we come back, there is value add for anybody who's looking to hire us. What is that addition that we're bringing to this employment when we come back with the LLM? That's the point that I add on that.
Thanks a lot, Desmond. It's a good point you mentioned emerging areas, because on Monday, one of the speakers on Monday will be Max Ikombe, whom you just heard speak a few minutes ago, and he'll be focusing on emerging areas of law. I'll just ask Toby Adebowale, then we will take the raised hands and then some of the questions on the Q&A box. Yeah, Toby Adebowale, are you there?
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, Mr. Ogba. Thanks for the very enlightening presentation. I mean, I'm not sure there's much for me to add right now, so I would rather just yield the floor so that those who have questions can ask their questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Toby. I can't see any hands raised at the moment.
Okay, there is an Eze Joycelyn, if it's eligible.
Eze. Wale, can you see Eze Joycelyn?
Yes, sir.
Wale, let her in.
Okay. She can speak now.
Joycelyn, are you there?
Okay, if she's not coming on,
I'm there.
All right.
Okay, go ahead. Joycelyn, go ahead.
Okay, I suspect there are network issues there. Maybe we should start taking the questions in the Q&A box, and anyone that has more questions can drop them in the box. We're able to deal with this. So Wale, if you can take deactivate Eze's access. Okay, now the first question I have is this is from maybe I shouldn't mention names. My question is, how does one juggle the rigors of litigation and probably furtherance of one's education and certifications when the work environment doesn't favor it? In other words, how do I get a further certification when I'm juggling with my 9 to 5 and the work environment doesn't favor it? That's a tough one, to be honest. It simply means that you are in an environment where your employers do not encourage you to know more. I think an employer should be willing to allow his or her employees to gain additional knowledge that is helpful to that person's growth, not just the personal growth, but also the growth of the organization. Perhaps it is one of those things you want to have a conversation about on how do you grow the organ, how do you allow me grow more skills and knowledge in order to better the business that I serve. But in the event, unlikely perhaps, that you are able to get that understanding from your employer, maybe then it is then one of those ones where, because you know the value that you're looking to get from that certification, you know the value you are looking to get from the additional knowledge you want to gain, you have to spend more time doing more than you should. So you have to make a lot of sacrifices in terms of your social time and focus on learning more. I think that's really the way to go. Either your organization gives you that institutional support, and when that institutional support is lacking, you then have to create time for yourself and abandon some of the good things of life and focus on that one. That will be my advice on that. The second one is, please, what professional course or exam can a lawyer who has an eye on IP take apart from LLM course for my little research? From my little research, I'm aware that the only uni that is mature is in Zimbabwe and some unis in Australia that offer LLM and IP. So to summarize that question, what can I do if I want to further my interest in IP without necessarily going to get an LLM? I'm not an IP lawyer. I can't speak to that confidently, but I know that a number of universities in Europe and many of them in North America tend to offer these certificate courses from time to time. Some of them run for about 6 weeks, some of them run for less, and you can develop as much knowledge as possible from those. Now, the other thing is, again, I can't say it enough. Since the Nigerian Bar Association, under the leadership of Olumide Akpata, revived the Institute of Continuing Legal Education, and Tobene Rejikwe became the chairman of that council, I know for a fact that if you look through the archives of what they have done, they have had lots of courses on intellectual property. The thing I have noticed though is that they seem to mix that up many times with other trainings. Now with Tobena on in this meeting, and given that he continues to run the MBA ICLE, I'm sure he's one of those who will take feedback. Maybe one thing you want to consider, Mr. Chairman, is rather than mix many courses together, we probably need training sessions for specific areas. I know you ran one for over about 10 series for fintech, if I recall correctly. Maybe you want to do the same for intellectual property. Maybe you want to do the same for other emerging areas and say, this time all we are focusing on is this. You did the same for tax a couple of months ago. So if the MBA runs that kind of program through the ICLE, what that would help us do is that rather than looking for those certifications elsewhere that may be quite expensive for you, you are getting the knowledge from Nigerian practitioners who actually understand it well and can help you relate it to our own local system, so you are better at it. If you then want to layer that with some international training and learning, you can pay for one of those other courses in the places that we talked about and gain more knowledge. But getting a good foundation from sessions like this that I hope the ICLE will organize will be a good way to start. Someone put in the chat box that there is WIPO, and I think that's the World Intellectual Property Organization, that they also offer these courses from time to time. So for the person who's interested in IP, that might be one way to go. The other question is
just very quickly.
Yes,
I just want to make the point that the first series we ran on when I took over the leadership of the MBA ICLE was actually on IP. And that series is actually stored on MBA HQ, which is our YouTube channel. And we'll be circulating some information note on that very shortly. And then secondly, in April this year, we will also have a second level of that training. So specifically IP will be led by Professor Shodipo Femi Agaba, Ntai Biken, Chinasa, Wanda, and the rest of them. So yes, indeed. So you can continue.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. So for you, Olaolu, I guess that answers the question. We can begin that training locally and then export it as much as we want. The other question I have is, what's the place of ADR in the legal profession? Can someone who has a passion for ADR settle for it? I think the answer to that is yes. I think the question is answers itself. If you have a passion for ADR, I think you should settle for it. There are many lawyers today who when they pitch to clients, one of the selling points they bring is, yes, I am a litigator. I do a lot of litigation, but I think it is beginning to lose its shine and sheen amongst businesses, and we can develop a construct where we can deploy our ADR skills to settle the problems that you have, whether it is you on the defending side or you on the as the one who's prosecuting, or the plaintiff, as the case may be. So ADR is I don't think I never go away in the profession. If anything, this is the best time to begin to grow your skill in ADR. How can a new WIG know an area of law to focus on? Is the other question that I have. That's an interesting one. How do you know an area of law to focus on? I think the starting point is to ask yourself, what area of law interests me more? What area of law interests me more? That's the first question I'll ask myself. If this area of law interests me, is this area of law one that is lucrative? If your learning of it is supposed to be for the lucrative aspects, this is an area of law that is lucrative. If it is lucrative, are there firms within my geography that practice this? But one point you should also note, and Tobin originally mentioned this, is geography in today's world is actually not important. What matters is that you have the skill set to export. So first ask yourself, what area of law interests me? Is that area of law lucrative enough for me to pursue a career in? If you are very interested in water law, and there is something called water law, for those of us who think I'm making it up, it might interest you because you are from the riverine area and you think water law is something that you need to do to talk about water bodies and protecting them. The next question will be, is that lucrative in Nigeria? If I have that, am I going to make anything out of it? It might well be that I could get lucrative in the coming years, but at the moment, people don't spend a lot of time doing that. People rather bring that into their knowledge of environmental law as opposed to focusing on water law. And then ask yourself, is there a place where I can practice these skills that I'm learning? If you go learn something in an area, if you develop an interest in an area of law that is not of great interest to your market, it just means that skill remains with you and you don't get the opportunity to practice it. So I would say find things in the sort of emerging areas we've talked about. Just put a list of these areas together and look through them and say, which area sounds interesting enough for me to pursue a career in? And which area am I slightly more familiar with? Which area are businesses in Nigeria likely to be interested in? Which area are law firms likely to find that they're interested in? Law firms today are talking about energy transition. Should I pursue something in energy transition? We have on this call alone, we've talked about fintech 20 times. Is that why are we talking about it? Because it's something that many people are talking about, but not many people know about. And so they say Nigeria, one of Nigeria's biggest exports is entertainment, but do we have enough people who are experts in entertainment law? So those are the sort of questions you ask yourself to develop an interest in any way and pursue it. I have another question. Please, for lawyers interested in arbitration and mediation, how can we assess the institutes affiliated with the NBA for certifications? Can I get a link to any institute at subsidized rates? This would be for, if Mayo Wallaby, who is the chairman of ICLE Lagos branch is on, he might advise us on this. But absent that, I am also sure that Tobin Erejuko, the chairman of the ICLE, can answer that question. Essentially, I know that we have those collaborations or partnerships with a number of institutes that offer ADR arbitration generally. The question is, can we give them access to those ones? We advertise this from time to time. Maybe it's time to advertise that again, so that people like the person who's asked this question will give us an answer. Somebody said we can check the NBA YouTube handle, and we'll also see it there. But if it's possible to share the information, please let's do. The other question is, I'm interested in corporate and commercial law practice, but I am not sure which area of corporate law I should specialize in. It's such a broad area, and you're right. I think I already answered a similar question earlier. Which question is, if you put together a list of those areas, and it's a simple search on the internet to tell us different areas of commercial practice. You see sports law, am I interested in it? No. You will see artificial intelligence, am I interested in it? Asterisk, I'll come back to this. You see clean energy, am I interested in this? Perhaps. So just do a short list and begin to, and then ask the next question, how relevant is this to my market? Those are the kind of things you want to focus on. The other question is, can I get the materials? Yes, I'm sure the MBA will circulate the materials afterwards. Then the last question that I have so far is, what's your advice for young lawyers who are currently working with companies without having worked with a law firm in their first year of core? Absolutely important question. Perhaps of all the questions that I've been asked today, I find this quite interesting. And thank you for asking this, Princess. Now, the question is, I come out of the university, I go to the law school. From the law school, I am asked to do my NYSC. I say, I'm not sure I want to go to a law firm. I don't want to be doing, excuse me, my lord. So I don't want to go to a courtroom. And I also don't think I want to work in the law firm, because they say those law firms on the island, in Lagos, or those big law firms, or whatever law firm it is, stress you a lot, or they don't pay you. So you find yourself, an organization makes you an offer to come and join me. I'm a real estate business. I'm willing to pay you 120,000 naira for NYSC. I am doing XYZ. I'm willing to pay you 150 for your NYC, and we jump at that opportunity. This question is telling, what is my advice for people like that who work for companies without having first worked in a law firm first? What's my view? My view is businesses hire people in their legal departments to support them with their knowledge. You are hired as a risk manager in a law firm. You are hired as a compliance manager in a law firm. You are hired as a strategic advisor to that law firm, who is able to give them that early stage advice. And based on your advice, they will take decisions. And in instances where they think they need to escalate the issue, they go to external counsel like law firms to say, give us an opinion or advise us on this matter. But the first point of call would always be you, who's working in that legal department. And what I ask is, do you find yourself to be, are you confident that if that matter comes to you and you are sit before your board and they ask you a question, talk to me about this thing, do you think you are comfortable enough or confident enough to speak to that advice without getting your business into trouble? So can you confidently advise your directors and say, oh, this is what I think you should do, and your advice will be sound and it will make business sense? Because if you don't have first year lawyer, you don't have the experience you've not gained the experience practicing law anywhere. You've not spent time learning as much as you should to help you give that sort of strategic advice to businesses. There is a risk that you may end up misleading the people that you're supposed to advise, except you recognize your deficiencies and you say, these are my initial views, but I think we should escalate it to a law firm, law firms that deal with this sort of matters on a day-to-day basis. So if you want to, my direct advice would be, gain experience. Even if you join that organization on your day one, either you gain experience by attending lots of training programs and getting as much knowledge as the guy who is working in-house or who's working in a law firm, or you are reading up as much as possible. So the law firms publish different things at all times. You are using that to leverage to grow your knowledge. The law firms that work with the company where you work, ask them, can you guys come in and train us on certain things, or can I join your training programs for your young lawyers? Because many of the law firms that you know about organize different trainings for their own people. And when they're organizing these trainings, they're organizing them because they are trying to grow capacity internally. And the capacity they are growing now, practical issues that clients tend to ask them. So you may reach out to the law firm that you work with routinely, that is the law firm that advises you as a external counsel, to say, when you have this sort of programs, can you invite us to come and join so that we also learn from it? You want to, the advantage that also gives you is that you build relationship with people who are working in there, so that when your board or whenever your superiors, who may themselves not be lawyers, are asking you that question, you have someone you can pick up the phone to speak to and say, I am being asked this question and I would like to pick your brains on this before it escalates and comes to you. That way they make you look good. They tell you what you need to say in terms of you exchange idea, you go back to your superiors, answer the question, it makes you look good. And when it gets more detailed, it makes sense for you at that stage to refer them to an external counsel who does this on a routine basis and is better placed to give the kind of advice that you want to give. But experience before going in-house for me is always the way to go. I've got a couple of new questions, and let me know when I overshoot my time, Mr. Chairman, so I can. Other than that, I can continue. One says, is it better to generalize in law before specializing in an area of law? Secondly, what if we have interest in different areas of law? Can we still be able to pull through? And the answer to both is yes. Is it better to generalize in law before you specialize in an area of law? Why do I say it is yes? For me, it is always a pyramid. That's how I see it. And perhaps it is my own training where it goes up like this. At the firm where I started working, the firm was still prides itself as a business law firm and a great one. At that firm, no matter what you do, you were expected to maintain at least at the time 6 files in court where you were practicing where you were doing litigation. And so everybody who passed through that firm at the time had a number of cases in court. And we said we were generally good practitioners. So you will advise on basically everything that walks through the door. But in doing so, there were specific people who had grown older. And you would go to those ones if the matter was one that requires some specialist support and talk to them about the thing you need, about the skills that talk to them about their skills to help you give the advice you need to give. What does that help? What does that mean? It means that I am a general advisor. A client has come to do, let's say, an M&A transaction, very simple. And they say, oh, advise us on X, Y, Z. I am a young lawyer, because I imagine this question is for people who are young. I'm a young lawyer and I am not so sure how to do. In an M&A transaction, there are moving parts and there are different parts in it. So there will be a tax aspect of it. If there's a tax aspect of it, I want to go to the guy who's a tax practitioner who's older than me, but who has started growing in that pyramid to say, what do I do in this instance? Advise me on this. In advising me, I'm picking knowledge from that. The next day, I'm doing something in the capital market space. The next day, I'm doing something in project finance. But you'd find at some point that all of these things are very related. You find that the skills you pick from one would help you in the next one that you get involved in. And so over time, you begin to narrow down your interest until you get to the peak of the pyramid where you would say, I have been here and I grew up to this place and this is where I am now. And the market recognizes me as someone who is a strategic advisor in a particular area of law. But that's what you have done, is that you have gained knowledge in different areas of law. But imagine if you simply jumped up to the top of the pyramid, how would that help you? That would help you because you would become an expert very quickly in that area of law. But in the market that we serve, and I'm trying to say this in the context of the Nigerian market, in the market that we serve, the risk that you have in doing so is you may not necessarily be that person that people will come to for other things that they have challenges with. Today, for instance, I don't do land law as a person, while there are many people at firm who do real estate. People from my village call me to say they want advice on certain things concerning land law, how someone has trespassed into their land and what they should do. I'm able to advise slightly on it because in the earlier part of my life, I had an idea of what I needed to do. And you have many of those. But imagine if I didn't know anything about it. I'm able to give advice and then push it on to someone else who's a specialist in that area. Imagine if I didn't know what to do and the person say, are you sure this guy is really a lawyer? He doesn't know this thing. So I think general knowledge is important, but as you grow, you need to gradually begin to specialize. That for me is the way to go. Now, there are a couple of two things on that. There are a couple of law firms in Nigeria that instead of asking you to generalize and begin to grow, what they do instead is to say, now that you've joined us as an NYSC associate, this is where your practice needs to focus on. Is that doing you any good? Maybe. A couple of firms realized very quickly that they were not training lawyers who were well-rounded. So what they now do, they've introduced some rotation within their practices. So you spend a couple of months or years, maybe 6 months or 8 months working in a particular practice area, then you move to the next practice, so that by the time you're finishing as a third year associate, you've gone around all the practices, and then you begin to focus on what you should focus on. I think that is a good approach to getting it. Now, internationally, what we see is that probably doesn't exist. People finish their training contract and then they go straight into a particular area of law and begin to practice that for the rest of their lives in many cases. Why is that? Why is that difference there? It's different because those are bigger markets where if I say all I want to do is electricity law, I would have enough electricity law instruction to keep me busy for the rest of my life. But if I say all I want to do in Nigeria is practice electricity law, by the time I do 7, 6, 8 of those, I would realize that there isn't much to keep me busy anymore. So in a market that it is not as advanced or developed as other markets, you must find additional skills to keep you going. So generalization is important before you begin to specialize, in my view. Now, the other question is, secondly, if we
I sort of like that area a bit, and I don't want us to lose track of it.
Yes.
And I like the perspective and the context you've given to it. To just say that even in a place like England, whilst you're doing your training contracts over a 2-year period, you're actually expected to do at least 3 seats before you then say, this is where I'm going to specialize. Mm-hmm. And then again, of course, you follow the opportunities. So they have that angle of taking you through different areas at the training contract level, which is actually a whole 2-year period before specialization. And I think that the advice you've given on this is as sound as it gets. And I'm more increasingly so I find that in a space like Nigeria, if you're specialized in the way you're specialized in a place like England and so granular, you might find that you have actually no work to do, right? So the years I worked in England for 10 years and I was working in urban regeneration. So if I focused on just urban, fortunately for me, it was quite diverse. There were a lot of different aspects of law that could come in. You could do a lot of financing there. You could do a lot of other corporate kind of transactions, procurement and the rest of them. So it was easy to then grow into certain other areas here. But if you say you're going to do it the way it's done in the UK, I'll tell you, you're not building too many new cities. You're not building too many town centers. So you're going to die of hunger in Nigeria if you're that specific about your specialization. And I wanted to add that bit to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. I think the second limb of the question is, what if we have interest in different areas? Can we still be able to pull through? I think that's been answered already. If you have interest in different areas that are analogous, there's no reason why you can add them. So my practice is finance, energy, and projects. That's what I do at 10+. Why did I settle for this as I grew older in the profession? It is because I found that these areas are interlinked in different ways. So my clients are looking to build a refinery somewhere, and they are saying, oh, we need to, and that's energy, right? We're looking to build a refinery somewhere, but we need to raise debt from the market. So finance comes into it. So I think develop some skills in finance. And because it is a project, EPC contract, there are contractors to speak to, there are project issues to deal with. So projects comes into it. My client is looking to do a capital market transaction, and they are looking, because they are doing that, they are looking to raise debt from the capital markets, and that will help them expand their business by acquiring another business. So you see the link between mergers and acquisitions and capital markets. My partner is doing work in the gas space, but beyond doing gas, because gas many times is associated with oil. So she's doing oil and gas, which is, so they will go hand in hand. So you will see people who say, I am doing entertainment law, and I'm also an IP lawyer, because in many cases, entertainment lawyers, entertainers have a lot of things to do with IP. So you see how related they are. So you must find things that are connected if you want to combine different subjects. But it might not be so great to say I'm combining human rights with fintech. Those are not necessarily things that are related. So you must find things that are related and stay within that bucket, so that when clients come to you, they see the synergy in the areas you settle to practice in. Is it possible to have a list of mentors we can attach ourselves within MBA? And the answer, again, without preempting to Bernard, the chairman of the ICLE, is yes. I know that the ICLE, as contemplated, and under the leadership of the Benarojikwe, what they do from mentoring point of view is that they have mentoring running in 3 prongs. First, they do the law firm mentorship, where they get smaller law firms to be mentees of bigger law firms. So the bigger law firms tell them how we have grown our practice to where we are today. They also have something where they do between individuals, and I serve as mentor to a couple of people that the ICLE has referred me to. So this is where more senior lawyers are paired with younger lawyers to serve as their mentors. And there is also the one where they get evening with more senior people in the profession. So what the ICLE does is they will find a very senior person in the profession and get young people in the room, so that senior person speaks to you as an oracle. And that in itself is some sort of mentorship. So you have that. We've had evening with Babalakin, we've had with Aluka, with Bengo Yebodi, and we've had with Digby and a couple of other people. So that sort of thing happens within the MBA. So when people ask the question, what does the MBA really do for me as a young lawyer? I think that question is misplaced because it is either because we've not followed the new MBA that we now have, that is doing this sort of programs for us, and that continues to be a forerunner in many things. If we follow it closely, we will see the benefit that the MBA brings to us. And if you ask me, as someone who's interested in growing knowledge, no arm of the MBA, with respect, does more in adding value to young lawyers or even small senior lawyers today than the ICLE, because ours is a knowledge-based profession. And so what the Institute of Continuing Legal Education has been doing in the last couple of about 2 years now, that have become very familiar with it, is trying to build capacity in different ways. There is the training sessions that happen. There is the mentoring session that they do. And there is Mr. Chairman, remind me, the one about job fairs. Is it Career Development Center, where they also advise people on growing their careers? So the ICLE does all of that. So to answer the question for the person who's asked me, can we get a list of mentors that we can attach ourselves to within MBA? I will leave that to Chairman Tobena, whom I'm sure is probably thinking about that with his team, because people on this call may not have been paired with mentors since they only just qualified. So maybe it's time again for you to run that program for the new people, so that they get their own mentors within the MBA and take it forward. The other question is, please, what is your advice for young lawyers who get employed in a one-man practice? Is it good to stay there for a long period, considering the growth you want for your career? One-man practices are sometimes a question of circumstance. It is, some people try to do their own thing, as opposed to joining hands with others. But as you would imagine, it is always better to be in a place where you have different people growing you or grooming you as a young professional, as opposed to where you are learning from just one person. Nothing beats the idea of having many seniors within the room who are telling you different ways of doing things, as opposed to having just one person whom you learn under. And whether the person has taught you the right thing or not, you would never know until you go out there to mix up with others. Should you stay with a one-man practice? One-man practice will go into a two-man practice tomorrow, into a three-man practice, and into a bigger practice at some point. What should matter more to me is, what is the vision of the one-man practice? Is that one-man practice looking to be a one-man practice forever? Or does that one-man practice want to become a big practice where you, who has joined that one-man practice, could become the second man, and you grow it from there? If it is the former, where the one man just wants to be Lord and Savior, and doesn't want anyone else to be part of that place, it just means there's no growth for you, and you must very quickly escape from that sort of practice and go elsewhere. But if there is room for growth, then I think you may want to consider staying there if you have the appetite to do so. Someone has asked me, please, sir, how do we register for the mentorship? Mr. Chairman Tobena, this seems to be coming up quite often, so maybe it's for you to address that point and tell us, what do we do regarding mentorship for the new lawyers?
Okay, so thank you. This one, is that all?
Should I pack? Okay, maybe you want to pack that and come. I'm scrolling through to see if I have more questions. I
think you've done well. The questions that I've seen are mostly almost repetitive.
Yeah, I think.
So somebody says, please, what's your advice to a young lawyer who hasn't been fortunate enough to gain employment in a top tier law firm or his preferred law firm?
Mr. Chairman, I'll let you answer this one together with the mentorship issues.
Okay. What's your advice to a young lawyer who hasn't been fortunate enough to gain employment in a top tier law firm or in his preferred law firm? Now, I think that it's important for us to understand what career development and a career is about. And it's like life's journey. So I see that a lot of young people have a premeditated idea of what being successful is all about. As far as this profession is concerned, I can tell you that there are a lot of people who started in 50, 60, 70 man, 100 man law firm who are today in a 2-man, 3-man law firm because they've started on their own. Some couldn't make partnership or partners where they were working and they've started building their own law firm. There are others who started in a 1-man law firm or a smaller law firm and then moved up the ladder. The most important thing is, and I see the word you use, preferred law firm. Presuming that that preferred law firm is there for a long time and you're going to be in this career for a long time, nothing says you cannot get there or somewhere better. The most important thing is, what do you have to offer? If you have what because I mean, an employment relationship is symbiotic. You have to have skills that the person you prefer also wants. So if you study what they do and you've equipped yourself in those areas where there's perhaps a gap for them, then ultimately you would work there. But the most important thing, I think, beyond the law firm where you work is what you have to offer yourself, because this is a knowledge-based profession. So continuing to develop and equip yourself and build yourself should be your major preoccupation. And then I can tell you for free that over time, you'll be able to work locally and internationally, wherever you want to work, as far as you have your eyes set on the goal. I'll also, before going to the mentorship question, I want to address the issue of ADR and arbitration, because I see a number of people raised it, and Desmond did a good job answering it. I'll just say that in the coming, and it's important that we pay particular attention to the emails that come from the MBA, especially those that come from the Institute of Continuing Legal Education. It's important that we pay attention to the flyers that we see that carry the MBA ICLE logo, because there's a lot going on. From the 27th of March or so, there'll be a training by local and international facilitators on arbitration and on ADR. Now, beyond that, as far as the certification is concerned, we have an ongoing relationship with the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators UK, the Lagos Nigerian arm of it here in Lagos, that allows you to pay for your associateship certification at a very subsidized rate. But even more interestingly, 2 years ago, when Toby Adebowale was chairman of the Young Lawyers Forum, we had a collaboration with the Chartered Institute of Arbitration UK itself, and there was a 75% discount on associateship training. And that initiative is about to come up again, and we're working on it, and we should be able to advertise to those who are interested in the coming weeks. And I think that's it, mostly for the arbitration. As far as mentorship is concerned, again, the same answer. There's a range of mentorship initiatives that we are trying to push through at the moment, focused on the new WIGS. And I will just say to you that even this session that you're on is actually supposed to be the first set of mentoring that you're supposed to receive, even though it's more like a group mentorship session. But it's actually trying to equip you to tell you things about the things that you need to do in the profession. So I'll just tell you to keep your eyes on activities and on events of the MBA ICLE. And I think before the end of I think on our timetable, it's actually June or so, we'll start pairing young lawyers with mentors. So I hope that you find those answers satisfactory. Desmond, I would say the comments, the chat box is quite clear with the comments from participants. They've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's quite telling the numbers we've had today, despite the fact that tomorrow is election. I also want to encourage the delegates to make sure that they tell their mates about this session. We're going to put it up on YouTube so that people can participate. But I'm so excited to have been part of today's event. Desmond, very illuminating, very educative as always. And we're going to hold you down to our business development series. Yes.
No, when you're done, just raising my hand.
Okay, to our business development series. And thank you very much always. I always say to delegates that whenever they see people like Desmond or other faculty people speaking at these sessions, they do it absolutely for free. And they do it because they want to help develop and build capacity amongst members of the profession. So our debt of gratitude goes to Desmond and to all the facilitators of this series. Thank you very much, Desmond.
Okay, so two things before I give my I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Someone has asked us how do they get the certificates for this, because some of their colleagues have gotten theirs already. I suppose, and I may be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, is that at the end of this, those who attended will get their certificates automatically and they can download it. Is that correct?
Indeed, indeed.
Okay, so that's the answer to the question. You get it downloaded. The other person has asked, how do they get on the MBA mailing list? Is there a mailing list? I suspect so. I suspect so because every person who's qualified, who's got his or her records at the MBA will typically get the MBA mailing list. And I think Wale, who's MBA IT admin, does a good job of dating that. Now, for those who have just qualified now, I do not know if their email addresses are already on the MBA database. And maybe Ezekiel, if he's still here, is something we need to look into. Is to get all of their names and their email addresses and pass them to MBA IT to add them to the mailing list. Before we even get there, perhaps it would be helpful if ICLE can share the data from email addresses of those who subscribe for this with the MBA so that they can update the mailing list and ensure that they get the emails from the MBA going forward. Now, go ahead. Now,
just going to say that if Wale is here, because they keep reassuring me that the young new WIGS are all on the mailing list and that they actually have a separate mailing list also for them. Wale, are you here?
Yes, sir.
Wale, yes. Can you speak to that point very quickly?
Okay. All right.
Are all the new WIGS on our MBA mailing list?
Yes, currently. Yeah.
All of them, but some of them appear not to be getting our emails.
Yeah, maybe these are the new WIGS that are just being called to the bar.
Yeah, those are the ones referring to, the ones that have just been called 2022, 2021. Nobody has been called in 2023, I imagine. Those ones, have we added them to the database? 2021, 2022.
Currently, they have not been given, some of them, they have not been given enrollment number, like 2022, that was called late last year. These are the people that we don't have their emails. These are the people that we don't have their emails currently. So once we have their email, because they have been paying their bar practicing fee currently, so once they finish paying bar practicing fee, their email will be updated.
This one, I think we'll take this offline and just sort it out.
It's matter to take offline. But before I go, Mr. Chairman, I thought I should thank you specially for the yeoman's job that you have been doing at the MBA as chairman of the Institute of Continuing Legal Education. It is one area of the MBA that is as important as it was, or as it is. We did not see a lot of traction until you agreed to take up this role. And since you took it up, one can only attest to the amount of work you've been doing, the sacrifice that you and other members of the council or the corps have been doing to move things forward. And this series that you've started for young lawyers makes the work a lot easier for many of us who interact with them on a routine basis and who get to be asked questions about how they can make progress in the legal profession, what the relevance of the MBA is to them, and how they can relate with people who are more senior in the profession. So knowing that you have continued to fly this flag and that you're not willing to give up on it, makes someone like me very happy. And I see we owe you a lot for your sacrifices. Thank you very much, and thanks to your team.
Desmond, your words are so kind. Thank you for your support always. I thank everybody, panelists and delegates alike, for being with us today. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, everyone.